Okay, Scott, can you go ahead and record, please?
Yep, we're recording.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining today. And Burley Spinks is going to start us off.
Welcome to GCC Governor's Crime Commission, our GEMS breakout session. I am Burley Spinks, a grant manager here at GCC. I will be moderating the chat in order to filter out any questions for the end of the session and assist with any technical difficulties if I'm able to do so. I would like to introduce the following presenters, grant managers of GCC. We have Andrea Russo, Allison Teen, Arian Cheek, Jacqueline Ray, Jane Langston, Samuel Conyers. Thank you for participating in the GEMS breakout session, where we will learn step-by-step procedures to successfully use GEMS for your projects. Please welcome Andrea Russo, who will now begin with the GEMS presentation.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to GEMS Training 101. I appreciate all of you being here today with us. And I look forward to working with you in the future. And get my slides going. Okay. And today we will answer any questions at the end of the session. So please make sure to write them down or enter in the chat box. And make sure to, when you're replying, select everyone. That way everyone can see the questions and answers if needed. Okay. This presentation will be recorded and available for access anytime online for your viewing. Today we will discuss in order my profile, organization roles, SAM's restoration, attachments and NOGI, project, VOCA, VAWA, progress reports, non-budgetary adjustments, grant period extensions, adjustment rules and tips, non-budgetary adjustments, and budget adjustments. And also we will go over reimbursement requests. So the organization roles include the authorizing official, which is the person who signs the awards and is the chief point of oversight for the duration of the project. The financial officer provides financial oversight to project and agency financial and federal policies and procedures. Project director is second to sign the grant award and responsible for execution of the project. Primary point of contact with GCC. The organization administrator submits all SAMS updates to GEMS, approves all requests for organization roles, and assigns roles to open projects. Approves, denies requests for project access, and deactivates access to roles if needed. For VOCA is Victims of Crime Act, and VAWA stands for Violence Against Women Act. Any questions that you have for this section, please write them down, and we will answer them for you at the end of the session.
Thank you, Andrea. Please welcome our next presenter, Allison Teen, with My Profile.
Hi, everybody. My Profile is where you find your organization roles, update the SAMS registration, and then direct cost information. All key organization roles must create an NCID in order to access GEMS. My Profile can be found at the top of the GEMS page program next to My Projects tab. Sorry, at the top of the page. When opening a new project, you will select your organization and complete a profile. On the left-hand side, hold on. On the left-hand side, you will find the tabs for each section. I will explain each tab, so please listen carefully, as I understand many people have difficulty with this section. Remember to write down your questions, and you can answer those at the end of all this stuff. Okay, to request an organization role, you will select the appropriate tab and select the box which applies to you. You will then enter a description in the justification box of the reasons you're requesting this role. You will then submit the request for the organization administrator to review. To request project access, you'll select the project you need to access and then complete the justification in the box below to verify the reasoning for your request. Then you will submit the request for your organization administrator to review. The organization administrator will have access to approve or deny any submitted roles for request. They may either approve or deny access to the project you have requested. They will make a selection and then click the blue button for finalization. The organization administrator can deactivate roles of personnel no longer working on the project with the agency. Please keep in mind, if there is a change in key roles, your grant manager needs to be notified and informed of the situation so they can better assist you with any project changes that will need to take place due to this change. Prior to any employee leaving a key position, make sure the roles are allocated to new personnel to assure there is no loss of access during the transition period. Select the user to be deactivated and click the blue button. The organization administrator may assign officials to project into specific roles by selecting the appropriate categories and clicking the blue button. SAM's registration updating. Select My Organization tab and enter the SAM's expiration date. Select Choose File and upload that, and it must be in a PDF. Currently, grant managers do not get an email telling us that you've updated your SAMs. So give them a call so you don't get put on hold. Okay, indirect costs. Here you will find indirect cost information. If you so choose and are approved to have indirect costs allocated to your project, this is where you put the information. Again, please write down all questions and they will be answered at the end of the presentation. Jackie Rose next.
Thank you, Allison. Please welcome to the next presenter, Jackie Ray, with the topic of opening their project in GEMS.
Thanks, Burley. Hi, everyone. My name is Jackie Ray, and I'll be going over the opening of the project in GEMS. Here we have the project overview screen. If you click on the left-hand tab, you'll see the overview of your project. This is information pertaining to your project, roles, and budget. This is considered the general page. As you can see, at the top right corner, you have an export to Excel and print options available for your convenience. Here you'll find information related to your project name, your project number, your project start and end dates, your project director and financial officer's names, and also the contact information for your grants manager. Below, you can see information for your budget, and it compares your spent and remaining balances for federal and match share. Attachments. Here's where you upload all your project attachments required by your signed grant award. You can also upload any contracts you may have for your project, policies and procedures, etc. You'll browse for the correct file in PDF format only, label the file clearly to explain what the file is, then you click the blue Save button to submit. The Notice of Grant Implementation. This is short titled NOGI. This must be completed in order to open your project and begin the process. You'll make the selection appropriate for your project and enter the description of your next task for opening and running your program with regard to your grant. Then you click the blue Save button to submit and your grant manager will review it. Again, the NOGI must be done first before anything else can be completed for your new project. Please remember to write down your questions so we may answer them after the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Please welcome our next presenter, Arian Cheek, with the topic Project Reporting.
Thanks, Burley. Hey, everybody. My name is Ariane Cheek, and I'm going to talk today about project reporting. Project reporting includes VOCA, Victims of Crime Act, VAWA, Violence Against Women Act, and project progress reports in GEMS. So for VOCA reporting, in order to submit your VOCA PMT reports, you must first complete the initial subaward report and have it reviewed by your grant manager. You'll complete the following slides to select and enter the appropriate information pertaining to your project. Once submitted and approved, your grant manager will then log into OVC PMT and complete the first portion of the subaward report for your project. Then they'll notify you to complete part 2. Once you complete part 2, you'll notify your grant manager and they'll verify the information and complete the process. Once this process is complete, you may then begin submitting your PMT reports. For ISAR, the initial subaward report, here's what the initial subaward report will look like that you'll need to complete in order to upload your PMT reports. Here's another screenshot of the page to complete. Form and click the blue Save button for submission. For VAWA reports, you'll complete your VAWA reports on the appropriate website and download the form. You'll then complete the form and validate it. You can see the click to download VAWA report link there. Then you'll select the appropriate time frame and upload the file and the PDF file into GEMS. Your grant manager will then check for validation. By clicking on the VAWA report link, you'll be taken to the appropriate page. So this is the page where you obtain the VAWA report. Once you download the report, you will use Adobe to complete and select the Validate button prior to saving as a PDF file. And then you'll upload it into GEMS for approval. This is the sample of the first page of the VAWA report for you to download and complete in Adobe. Next, you'll go here to upload the PDF file VAWA report and click the blue Save button for submission. The project progress report is an annual report that must be completed each year of the grant. You will select the appropriate time frame here in GEMS. You will then complete the objectives portion of the report. Then you'll complete the activities portion of the report here. Here, you can add any comments you'd like to include in your yearly progress report, and you'll click the blue Save button for submission. Again, don't forget to write down any questions you have and save them for the end of this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Arian. Please welcome our next presenter, Samuel Conyers, with the topic of non-budgetary adjustments.
Good morning. My name is Sam, and I will be reviewing the non-budgetary adjustments portion of this presentation. On the left-hand side of GEMS, you will find the non-budgetary adjustments tab. Select the tab at the top right-hand corner, and you'll see the green button that says Add. Within this button, you'll have 3 options: grant period extension, project personnel adjustment, and project adjustments. This is a rare usage because this changes the scope and is only used in special situations. First, we have grant period extension. Please keep in mind, you must notify your grant manager prior to submitting a grant period extension request. If you have a new project that's opening for the next grant cycle, an extension request cannot be granted. After you present your grant period extension request with your justification, and if your grant manager approves it, the extension will be, you would then submit your request. Make sure to enter the new future date in the date field, and next you will enter the justification for the request. Remember, please click the blue Save button, and your grant manager will receive your submission. Next, we have personnel adjustment. To complete a personal adjustment, you will select the Personal Adjustment tab at the top right of the screen. To edit the job information, you select the position that needs adjustments and then select the Edit button. You would then select the button line item and enter the job title and type of line item. Next, you will enter the name of the new employee. Now, if a previous employee still needs to be reimbursed and a new employee is coming in, you will need to add both names to the name line to ensure all names match documentation that's submitted for that position. Once the previous person is fully paid, you should remove that name from the position line and with another non-budgetary adjustments. Once the previous person is fully paid, you should remove that name from the position line with another budgetary adjustment. Keep in mind that all budget adjustments auto-generate a non-budgetary adjustment for each submission. Remember, please write down your questions and save them for the end of the presentation. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Samuel. I would just like to please note, please everybody mute themselves if possible so that everyone can hear. I thank you. Please welcome our next presenter, Andrea, with budget adjustments.
Hello, everyone, again. Thank you for your continued joining. And yes, please make sure to mute so everybody can hear. And we will answer questions at the end of this session. Welcome to the budget adjustments portion of this presentation. Okay. Once you submit a budget adjustment. When you submit a budget adjustment, first you will need to contact your grant administrator to inform them of the change you plan to make and give them justification. Approved by your grant manager, you may then submit a budget adjustment, but not before. A budget adjustment will need to be submitted when you know your budget will change, not after something is already purchased, and only after you've analyzed complex purchases. What is an appropriate reason for a budget adjustment? You would need to complete a budget adjustment in order to move the project forward, only under agreed conditions in the sign award, if you have changes in staff, or if there's equipment that is less and you need to move the funds elsewhere so you can utilize everything in the purpose for your program, okay? It must be allowable, allocable, reasonable, and necessary for the sole purpose of the project.
It seems like Andrea's had some difficulties. Let's just hold on 1 second and see if we can get her signed back in. So please be patient.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I apologize. I just got randomly knocked out. I really apologize for that. We will continue shortly. Okay. Can everyone hear?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. Thank you. I apologize. That was really strange. I'm working on sharing the content now. Back to where we were. Can everyone see the PowerPoint?
Yes, we can see
Looks
the
good.
PowerPoint.
Okay, it's right left off. Okay, I'm gonna start from the beginning just in case, because I know it's locked out. Okay, so what is an appropriate reason for a budget adjustment for the project to move forward? It must be allowable, allocable, reasonable, necessary for the sole purpose of the project according to your application. For example, edit versus freeze buttons. The edit option is available only if no funds have been drawn down for that line item. The freeze option is for when funds have been drawn down from the line. Okay, you will find the Budget Adjustment tab on the left-hand side of your GEMS project. Click the top right green Add Adjustment button. For a complete justification description for the adjustment request and justify the reasoning behind the request. Select only if you need to freeze the year one budget line item. This is for when you're switching from year one in your project and you're switching over to year two in your project and you have remaining funds left over from year one. You would select yes to freeze year one. If not, you would select no if you're continuing within the same year. Then you would select the blue save button. GEMS will create an adjustment ID and you will see an option to add a budget line item or to freeze an entire budget year. Year is only acceptable when you are moving all remaining funds from a previous year into the next year. So this button right here is the freeze year button, and this is to add a budget line item. Select Add Budget Line Item, and then a new screen will pop up. Then you will select the appropriate category for your line item. Then you select the type of category you are adding as a line item. A note for fringe. If you're dealing with a fringe line item and need to add a new fringe line item, you will need to select Fringe Other and label it manually. So right here you see Other. You can only do one of these per project. So if you need to change your amounts in your line item for any reason, you would have to manually label it. But you may select Fringe Benefits Other. So it will still be under Fringe Benefits, but you will have to manually label it. And please make sure to label it, okay? Enter the quantity. All reimbursements must be submitted monthly, so it would be ideal to enter the number of months left in the project. 5 months equals 5 quantities. Whole numbers only. Please do not use decimal numbers as they cause an extreme mess. So always use quantity. If you have equipment and you need to buy 2 different equipment items, it's perfectly okay to enter 2 quantity. However, we prefer everything to be submitted on a monthly basis, so 1 quantity per reimbursement, okay? See examples of entries here. So we have personnel, salaries, description core advocate, Anna Marlowe, employee names. You may enter more than 1 name in this line. Just so you know, you can add more than 1 name. You can put first name, last name, letter, first name, last name. All names in here must match the documentation being submitted for this particular budget line item, okay? And make sure to select the position type, the job type, and very, very important, always enter the appropriate percentage, because we do look at that, and with the cover sheets, we do look for the cover sheet percentage to match the time and activity, okay? So please make sure that all of this information is correct prior to submitting. Okay. Okay. Editing a budget, to edit a line item, you will enter the amounts for match and federal share. You may reduce the quantity or the amounts, but you will not be able to increase. So editing a line item is if you're trying to decrease the funds and move it somewhere else, or if you're decreasing the quantity. But if you are trying to add more funds and moving funds from another line to this line, then you must freeze or delete that line item and create a new line item, okay? So if you're increasing, you add a new line item. If you're decreasing, you may edit the line item, okay? And always make sure to hit the blue save button. Now, if you have been approved for requesting additional federal share only, you will be prompted with a message at the top of your budget screen to inform you that you have requested additional funds according to your budget edits. So all of the information that you enter, any edits or deletes that you have in your project, it will show. If you are accidentally adding additional federal share, this right here will let you know at the top of the screen in blue. It will let you know you're requesting an additional amount of $412.50. If this is accidental, please make sure to recalculate all of your budgets and make sure that you have the appropriate amounts. Unless you were approved for additional funding, this message should not be here. You will also receive notification if you are undermatched or overmatched, so please pay close attention to that, okay? Once you have completed your budget adjustment and you have verified all the information is correct and your numbers add up, you will then submit it to the financial officer. Your financial officer will thoroughly review this request, and then they will send it off to us at Governor's Crime Commission for your grant administrator to review, okay? Always, always, always make sure that you notify your grant manager of what you would like to do prior to submitting a budget adjustment. That way we can walk you through and assist you with any information, whether it's allowable, allocable, reasonable, necessary for your project. So please make sure and keep in mind to do that, okay? So please remember to write down any questions you may have, and we will answer them at the end of this presentation. We thank you for your cooperation.
Thank you, Andrea. Please welcome our next presenter, Jane Langston, where her topic will be reimbursements request.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jane, and I will be going over the reimbursement portion of the GEMS breakout session. You will find the Reimbursements tab on the left-hand side of your project screen in GEMS. Select the Reimbursements tab. This is a perfect example of what happens when you have not yet completed your Notice of Grant implementation for your project. Otherwise, you will have a green Create Reimbursement button available. To create a reimbursement, you'll select the green Create tab and enter the time period of your request. For example, July 1st, 2019 through July 31st, 2019. You will then click the blue Save button to continue. GEMS will automate a transaction ID, and you will see an overview of the dates you requested. Make sure the dates are correct. You can select Edit to correct the dates if needed. Select Add Document. Documentation should be submitted as PDF files only and a separate PDF should be submitted for each budget category, such as personnel and supplies. You may upload all the documents needed prior to selecting your line items for reimbursements. Please make sure to label your page numbers. Select the PDF file and click the blue Upload button. Once all files are uploaded, you will then click the green Add Reimbursement Line button. Select the appropriate cost category and line item. Enter the quantity and the amount needed for reimbursements. Make sure the cover sheet and documentation match all requested amounts. Enter the page numbers for this line item, for example, P1 to P3 for personnel. You may enter both letter and number characters in the page number box. This assists grant managers with efficiently finding the appropriate documentation for each line item. Once complete, click the blue Save button.
Thank you, Jane. Please welcome the last
One
presenter.
more slide.
Oh, one more slide?
Yeah.
Once you've completed all of your requested line items and added documentation, you will click the blue Submit to Financial Officer button. Once your financial officer thoroughly reviews your reimbursement request, they will then submit it for your grant manager's approval. If your grant manager determines that there's any missing or incorrect documentation, they will send your request back for modifications. You will then complete these modifications, upload the correct documentation in PDF format, and resubmit to GCC for review. Please prepare any questions you may have at this time and get ready to write down the answers.
I do apologize, Jane.
Sorry.
Please welcome our last presenter, Andrea.
Thank you so much, Burley, and thank you, everyone. You did a great job with the presentations. At this time, now is the time for questions and concerns, so please add your questions to the chat and reply to everyone, and we will do our best to answer them. Please stick to general grant questions at this time. If you have questions regarding your project specifically, please contact your grant manager directly. We do have a GCC point of contact email with GCC_grants_management@ncdps.gov. You can submit all your questions there as well. If they're specific to your project, please start off the subject line with your project number. This definitely helps us help you quicker and easier as possible. So right now we are open to answering questions, and I will open up the chat room. And Burley, if you could read the question for me, that would be great.
Okay, we have several questions. First question is do we need to submit personnel adjustments for changes in volunteers?
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Do we need to submit a personnel adjustment for changes in volunteers?
We typically would like all the names of the volunteer time and activity to match the time and activity sheets uploaded. And it does give you an option when uploading reimbursements. You can still add names with the new gems. You can enter those names under the description line. You can add those names in there. It definitely helps. And with auditors, they want everything to match. So as long as we have those names that match, then yes, the names should match the documentation for the volunteers. but we do understand that some people have a significant amount of volunteers. So as long as you have your time and activity sheets signed, and all the time and activity sheets are uploaded on our website, so they have been updated and the full versions are available. So, and the volunteers and match are treated the same way as regular employees. So just keep that in mind, that it's basically, we look at it the same, even though it's match. It still counts as federal documentation.
All right. Our second question: will funds left over from year one grant immediately roll over to year two grant budget, or do we have to do something?
Yes, you do have to do a couple steps. First, you would email your grant manager. We don't always know when you're exactly ready. When you select your, when you enter your last reimbursement for year one, let's say you've submitted all your reimbursements up to September 30th, you will then have to reach out to your grant manager to let us know that you are ready to switch over to year two. Now, in order to switch over to year two, you will have to complete a budget adjustment. This budget adjustment is to move all remaining funds into surplus. If you do not have any funds remaining from year one, then you will not need to do a budget adjustment, and your grant administrator will be able to switch you to year two. But if you do have funds remaining, we will have to work through, you'll have to create a budget adjustment, freeze all lines for year one, and then once your grant manager receives that budget adjustment and approves it, then we can switch you over to year two in our system, and then you will be able to see year two budget in GEMS. And if you need to make any budget changes at that time for year two, then you would submit another budget adjustment.
All right, thank you. Our next question: do we need prior approval for online based training to be done in lieu of in person conferences? I'm struggling to make our cash match due to conference cancellations.
Okay, so this is for online conferences out of state or in state?
It does not state it. I think it
Does
was
not say.
just in general.
Okay, this is actually a new situation that has been happening, is conferences are now switching to online. So I believe we are still working on the answers for that. So please email the GCC Grant Management inbox, or email me or your grant manager, and we will find out the answers to that question, okay? I don't want to say anything until I know exactly how we are dealing with that due to COVID-19.
Okay. Our next question: could you please explain freeze year, the terminology freeze year?
Yes. So freezing the year means that you have spent all your funds needed for year one, and so you are now ready to move to year two. So then you would freeze that. The other option for freeze is when you're creating a budget adjustment and you are moving funds from one line item to another, you would have to freeze that line item. So freeze is when funds have already been drawn down from that line item has been used previously, so you only have the freeze option. Whereas when you have the delete option, that's when the line item has not been touched yet and no reimbursements have been made for that line item yet. Okay?
All right. If we are nearing the end of year one of our grant cycle and still have reimbursements to submit for the first year, can we create a budget adjustment to roll over funds to year two after the official last date of year one?
In order to switch over to year two, you would first have to submit all your reimbursements for year one. You cannot submit reimbursement for year one under year two. Okay? So you would have to submit it under year one, which if you have a 2-year project, you are allowed to, wait until all your reimbursements are submitted for year one before you switch over to year two. Okay.
Okay. Next question, does label your page numbers mean to write the number of the page on the document before scanning it in or in the GEM system?
Typically both. Sometimes Adobe does not match up with the page numbers, and so it's very confusing when we're trying to look for documentation. The GEM says one page number, but Adobe says another page number, and this is what takes us longer with the discrepancies. So if the document page numbers, you can add letters and numbers in that little document box in GEMS. So if you do P1 through P3 for Rachel's time and activity sheet or submission, then you would put page 1 through P3 for that line item when you enter for the reimbursement, and then you put P1 through P3 on the page number. So it would help to handwrite them or add them any way that's easier for you on the actual pages. That way they match up and we can look at the documentation at the same time. So that therefore everything is copacetic and everything matches and we're not like flipping in different directions, and which takes longer, and we try to get you reimbursed as soon as possible. So it definitely helps to add the page numbers to the documentation box and on the actual paper.
All right, I think the next question is referencing to this also. They're stating that there's not enough space to list all page numbers.
There should be enough space in the box, so each reimbursement line, you enter the page numbers. So when you select the reimbursement line to submit, you would enter, let me go back to that slide. So this right here, this is where you would enter the page number. You can add letters and numbers. So P1 through P3, P21 through P22, you can add that in there. I don't believe there's a character limit. If there is, it still should be enough room to add it in that box. But each line item, you can add the page numbers for that specific personnel. So if you're submitting personnel for Annette and her documentation is pages 1 through 5, you would put P1 through P5 under this particular reimbursement line item. Does that make sense?
All right, thank you. Next question, Andrea. You mentioned something about decimals causing a problem. It
Yeah.
wasn't clear. Could you elaborate?
So when decimals are entered in the quantities towards the end of the project, it adds like, it calculates weird cents and your reimbursements. Like I have never seen decimal points and since like probably 2.5 years ago when I first started working at GCC. We try to stick with whole numbers because it's cleaner. The reimbursements are submitted monthly, and when you use decimal points, it causes budgeting issues when you're calculating. So we try to use whole numbers only. So please, please, please try to use whole numbers.
All right. Is there updated cover sheets that we would need to use for this new grant cycle starting October 1st, 2021?
We
Or
do
2020, I'm
have,
sorry.
it's okay. We do have cover pages. Everything has been updated on our GCC website. So periodically, please always make sure to go to our GCC website under the forms section, and you will see all of our time and activity sheets, our forms, if your current time and activity sheet does not have the percentage box on it, please go to the website and make sure you download the correct time and activity sheet and the correct forms. Okay, and the cover pages should all be updated on the website. There should be no extreme changes, anything. If we do update them, they're probably very minimal, but they will be the same cover pages. But please make sure to check the website to make sure you have all the most recent materials. Okay.
If more than one staff person is doing a particular job, do we put both names of the staff in the employee section of the job summary, or do we add the position again and put another employee's name? For example, if there are two staff covering the daytime period, one 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. and one 1 p.m. to, I say, 5 p.m., do we put the two different names for this position?
You would enter both names for that same position, because if it has the same position title and they're doing the same work, then you could put both for the same line item. However, as grant administrators, I think I can speak for us all when we would prefer to have two different line items. One for like court advocate 1, court advocate 2, and then each have their own name. That way, when we're calculating the amount that you're trying to reimburse, we're not confused by two amounts trying to be reimbursed together. And it's also easier for us to see how much each person was paid, because when they're combined, it's a lot of calculations going on. So it would be much easier if you just do two separate line items with the two employees. So position 1, position 2.
Mhm. Due to the match waiver, my vocal budget has changed. Should I wait until the grant opens to make budget adjustments, or should I do it before it starts?
So as far as the match waiver, this would particularly be a planner question, but so when you get a match waiver, it does not take away funds from your project. So you have federal share and then you have match share. The federal share does not change. It's the match share that gets eliminated. The match share is your contribution to the project. So you're not losing any funds. You're just keeping the same federal share. Okay?
Yes. Hey, Burley, this is Jim from the planning team. If an agency needs to change their budget now that the match has been removed, my recommendation is to go ahead and contact their planner now and get the planner to open that grant back up so that they can indeed change their budget. Just the agency needs to understand they can move money around. However, in doing so, it cannot change the scope of the grant. The scope of that project cannot be changed because that is what's been approved by the commission. But they can make slight changes to budget now that is affected by the removal of the match. Thanks.
Andrea,
Thank you, Jim.
Andrea, this is Sandy Dixon. I also want to follow
Hi.
up on that. We just sent out an announcement to all the agencies that will be receiving awards starting 10/1, letting them know to go in and check their budgets just to make sure when GCC did that technical batch process of removing the match, that there were no little glitches in their budgets. So if the grant is already open, they need to go through the grant administrator. For those grants that are not yet open but will open 10/1, go ahead and get with your planner now so we can get that straightened out before we send out your award.
Yes, thank you, Sandy. And if you do have any questions, please also remember that we have our new special email account where you can send. So please make sure in the subject line you put your project number or your agency, preferably project number if you know it. That way it's easier for us to find where you are in our system so we can help you the best possible way.
All right,
Any
thank you.
other?
Yes. Why do we need to re-enter the job title again if it is already listed on the reimbursement?
If it's already listed in the reimbursement, it should already be there and you shouldn't have to change it. It's just an option in there as the description, so you can add the name in there. If you haven't been able to do a non-budgeted adjustment yet, it'll let you add a name if you need to. But if you ever have changes in staff, please notify your grant administrator first.
Okay. Could the cover sheets on the GCC webpage be modified as Excel sheets as opposed to Word tables, so we would know that the subtotals are accurate?
Currently, we do not have that option. That is something we can think about. However, all documents uploaded for reimbursement and in GEMS must be PDF files only. So they would have to be converted to PDF files, and this may cause difficulty for some subrecipients. But if you personally want to create an Excel or copy it to Excel, if that helps you, or calculate your own way in Excel, that definitely is an option. As of right now, we're going to be keeping it as Word documents, but I can ask my team leads and supervisors what they think on that.
Okay, Andre, I think this is another question that we may need to. My grant manager left in August, but she's still listed in GEMS as my manager. How do I find out who's my new grants manager?
Okay. My question is, have you been helped since they left? Has somebody contacted you to help you with your grant? If not, I sincerely apologize. Please reach out to that email and email us as soon as possible with your project number, and we will do our best to get you transitioned. We are going through a lot of transitions right now with new staff, so we're still working on switching grants over to the appropriate personnel for grant administrators. But please reach out to us.
All right, there's not enough space in GEMS to enter all the page numbers. We can list them all on the cover page, but we cannot enter them all in GEMS. I think this is the second part. There's a character limit in that box.
Okay. I have seen submitted in most of my reimbursements that you can put P1 through P25. So each page number is just per reimbursement. So if you're trying to do P1 through P22, P23 through P25 and yada, then it may cap you off. But if you're just entering it per reimbursement, it should be okay. Just make sure that all your documentation for one person, 1 through 5 instead of 1 through 2 and then 7 through 8. So we try to keep it in sequence. That way that won't be an issue.
Do you want us to organize documentation by employee as opposed to documentation type? For example, Jane Doe's pay stub, Jane Doe's fringe, bank statement, John Smith's pay stub, John Smith fringe, etc.
Okay, so starting from the cover page, this is a very good question and thank you for asking. So the cover page, you would enter all your personnel first, and then you would add the fringe. Typically what I receive is I receive the cover page, then I receive a next time and activity sheet, a next pay stub, a next pay stub, and then the next personnel, Rachel, time and activity sheet, Rachel's pay stub, and then after all of that is aligned, then the fringe is usually added on the bottom. But make sure to enter all the fringe details and information in the cover page.
All right. Should we be rounding up or down when we're using whole numbers?
I would round as close as possible to your actuals. So reimbursement should be actual documentation, actual numbers, actual percentage of time worked. So typically I would say round under, unless you worked more in a specific month, then you would enter, like, for an electricity bill. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, and that's perfectly okay as long as the documentation matches and you have allocated your budget for that.
All right. The next question is, how do you define scope?
So scope is basically, if you're trying to change more than 10% of the scope of the project, it's basically what is written in your original application. What you stated in your original application, your original budget. If you're trying to change your budget that is completely different than the original, that's considered change of scope and needs prior approval and justification prior to grant administrators reviewing and maybe having to go to their supervisor or exec to make sure it's allowable. It's based on situation.
If we are in our second year, we have money in the surplus. How can we move the money to other lines?
So in order to move money from surplus in the lines, all you would need to do is first contact your grant administrator to let them know what you plan on doing. And if we approve it, then you would create a budget adjustment and just reallocate the funds to the lines, and the surplus will deplete automatically. So once you add funds into line items, the surplus is automatically taken out. Keep in mind, I know there's a lot of match waivers, but if you have match on a line item, and I apologize for not mentioning this earlier, if you have match on a line item and you're moving, if you delete that line item, match will go into limbo. You'll have to manually add the match. Surplus is federal share only, okay? Surplus is only federal share. It's only federal funds. So any match that you had on that line item would need to be manually relocated or reallocated, sorry. I hope that answers the question.
All right. If we are very detailed in the job description field with regard to personnel, do we also have to submit an official job description and attachments?
I believe that would be a planning question, but I believe resumes are required for contractors and also employees uploaded to GEMS attachments from the start of the project or during the application process. I don't know if Sandy or Jim are still on.
This is Sandy. We have had discussions. We recognize there's some duplication. But at this time, we are asking for the full job description, as well as the description within the application describing their duties associated with the project.
Thank you, Sandy.
Thank you. What is the purpose of a cover sheet since the exact same information is entered into the reimbursement?
Thank you for your question. That is a very good question because I'm sure many subrecipients have the same question. This is due to having audits. This is an auditor's request. They had us create it and they approved it. So this is by the auditor so they can actually see exactly what is being submitted and the documentation that follows it. It's also good for us grant administrators to see what you propose to have submitted on the cover sheet, and it must match all the submissions that you have for a time and activity sheet, equipment, supplies, all of that has to follow. So it's basically a guide for auditors and us to make sure that all the documentation submitted has been submitted. Let's say you have 3 personnel, but one of the personnel is missing from the documentation. This helps us see that so we can send back the modifications required so you can upload the documentation and get reimbursed, because otherwise you wouldn't get reimbursed if the documentation wasn't there.
Okay. Andrea, we're now out of time, so I turn it back over to you with the questions.
Okay, thank you so much everyone for attending today. I appreciate your attendance. If you have any further questions, please feel free to send an email to the GCC_grants_management@ncdps.gov. Thank you so much for participating in this event today, and I hope you learned a lot. And we will be having another grant writing workshop next week, so please keep a lookout for that session as well. And we appreciate all of your hard work and everything you do for the community of North Carolina. And we hope you have a wonderful weekend and a great day. And if any of my team wants to say anything or tell everyone to have a great day, go ahead and unmute yourself. And I wish everyone a wonderful week.
Thank y'all for all attending.
Thank you for attending, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.